What's going on, my fellow residents? It's me, TheFrozenCavern, and today I'm going to be reviewing the first game in the Jak and Daxter series, Jak and Daxter The Precursor Legacy. Now, for those of you who don't know, out of the PlayStation 2 platformer triangle, that being Sly Cooper, Ratchet and Clank, and Jak and Daxter, my childhood was dead set on the Sly Cooper series. Ratchet and Clank, not really, and Jak and Daxter was completely void to me until 2017. I got an interest in the Jak and Daxter series due to a friend of mine, Prodigy XCD, persuading me to do so. I'll leave a link to his channel in the description, so make sure you show him some support. Up to now, I have played Jak 1, 2, and 3 on the channel, and in case you haven't seen those, make sure you go and watch them or just skim over a few videos so you'll have a better idea on my experiences with the series. By the way, before we begin, I'm going to mention something. I played these on the PS3 remastered version, so certain issues or problems that I mention might just be the PS3 version alone, so make sure to let me know about anything like that I bring up. But without further ado, let's begin with Jak and Daxter The Precursor Legacy. Jak 1 starts off with having to turn Daxter back to normal after accidentally falling into a silo of dark eco. The only way he can be changed back is to head to the northern side of the continent in order to find Gull Acreon, a dark eco sage. As you continue through the game, suspicions arise when Jak and Daxter, as well as Samos, the green eco sage, and Kira, a mechanical whiz, find out that the other sages are nowhere to be found. Later on, Jak, Daxter, and friends encounter the game's villains who have kidnapped the sages and plan on using their power to break the silos filled with dark eco and use it to change the world to how they see fit. And now it is up to you to stop them. Overall, the game managed to make a world with a little bit of depth to it with the eco precursors and the sages, and even the main enemies in the game, the lurkers. This managed to be successful in creating a vast world with a lot of hidden lore to it. But the villain obtaining power to change the world in his or her own image thing has been done many times. Granted, this is coming from a time where story didn't have too much of a grasp over gameplay, so I won't fault it too much, but at the same time, seeing this trope is still upsetting. Something that I like about how Jak and Daxter presents itself is with the color palette that it has. It's nice and varied, and it's able to allow certain objects to stand out, and you can tell the differences between one area to another. And there's also a day and night cycle in the game. A very nice touch, I might add. This gives it kind of a cartoonish kind of vibe, which I feel is definitely what the game is trying to go for. And the music is also really good for what it is. To me, there's not exactly too much that's memorable, but the songs do work for the areas and the events that are happening in the game. And in my opinion, the best part of the presentation would have to be the voice acting for most of the characters, especially Daxter, who I'm pretty sure has the most lines in the game.
Then no problem. We got the moves, eh, Jak? We'd love to stay and chat, Big Green, but we're itching to get on with our adventures.
The only one I can't really say the same for is Jak, since he doesn't really talk much in the first place, and his screams could not sound any more bored when he falls into a pit. Aside from that, the character interactions were actually pretty funny as well. Nothing to make me burst out loud laughing about, but gave me a little bit of a chuckle from time to time. Jak and Daxter take an approach that's similar to a Mario game where the main objective is to get a certain amount of an item, in this game's case, power cells, before you can continue on to the next area where you proceed to do the same main objective. You can travel through over 15 different areas, each connected to one another through a hub world, and each area has their own set of objectives. Getting to a particular spot in the area, going through holographic gates, fighting enemies, and pushing blockers are only a few of these sub-objectives. Some of the platforming for these can actually be a challenge, and sometimes you'll need to think a little bit before you move. Two common missions in most of the areas are Scout Flies and Precursor Orb trading. For the Scout Flies, there are 7 of them each time they show up, and they are scattered throughout the area. For Precursor Orbs, which you collect in the hub world, you give them to people around the villages to trade for a power cell. There are also minigames such as fishing, shooting, and gauntlets that you are able to do to add variety in addition to the platforming. The bosses you encounter will help test your skills and abilities that you have learned so far, and you need to defeat these bosses in order to get a power cell and or move on to the next area. Going throughout the hub world, you use different types of eco which you can get through vents or clusters you find on the ground to help you complete these objectives. Each type changes certain aspects of Jak and Daxter, such as increased strength, makes you shoot fire, or activate precursor technology. Green eco is used for your health, which you need 50 separate orbs or a whole cluster to get back a piece of your health or to store up an extra 4th hit. Standard enemies take 1 or 2 hits to kill, so if you know the distance of your hits, you'll do fine. Now, it did take me a while to figure out what I could and couldn't get away with, but that's probably just me being bad at video games. The Precursor Legacy does a great job at establishing a setting and giving us some lore, but not too much. Enough to make you question things, but enough to be satisfied if a sequel were to not show up, which is perfect for what the first game of a franchise is supposed to do. Each area felt unique and recognizable, and there were also times where you might have ended up having to go back to previous areas to help get yourself more orbs or power cells, which encourages exploration, which is something I feel this game strives on. The music in the game also helps set the tone for where you are, and is very distinct from one another. Jak and Daxter control interestingly as well, making them stand out from other platformers that had games around the same time, such as Crash Bandicoot and Wrath of Cortex and Sonic the Hedgehog from Adventure 2, with the help of varied dodging, jumping, and attacking mechanics as well as the different types of eco. I like how varied a playthrough could be for someone due to the multiple objectives you could do to get power cells. It almost gave a sense that no 2 playthroughs would be the exact same, and it also allows for people to be able to get certain objectives that other people might not be able to. Also, there are very little to no load times at all between areas due to everything being connected, which makes an uninterrupted play session more possible. The characters also clash very well, but also knew when to be serious, or at least relatively serious, and the voice acting for most of said characters were also really good. Like I mentioned before in the story part of this, the villain changing the world for themselves thing has been done before and unfortunately has also continued on in the stories. It was unoriginal then, and it's still unoriginal now. I understand that we do have to have a story, but at the same time, it is disappointing seeing such a cliched story. Now, this might just be a me issue, but the camera for this game is not that great to control. The camera cannot be turned up or down, but instead zooms in and out on Jak and Daxter, which I've never had a use for. I probably have an issue with this because I'm more used to games where I can turn the camera in any direction so I can get a full view of my surroundings, like in Mario's Sly Cooper or Kingdom Hearts. Being able to only turn the camera left and right was very annoying to try and get used to. This also made some platforming very difficult. Going straight forward is fine, but if you need to go upwards or even worse, downward, as you can't look below you to see where the platforms are, it would sometimes result in you having to make a leap of fate and hope for the best, and it doesn't help that there's fall damage and instant death pits in some areas of the game, so if you mess up, you're going to be set back a good while. Also, remember those very dodging, jumping, and attacking mechanics I mentioned before? There's a catch to that. The game doesn't tell you how to do these inputs. As much as I hate in-your-face tutorials, maybe a pop-up telling you how to do them would have been nice to have, since there are sections in the game that require you to at least have the dodge roll and the super jump. And if you don't know how to do these things, then you can't get through certain areas due to the large gaps or dodge attacks because the attacks are too fast. Had I not had someone to tell me these things, I would have been stuck on certain segments of the game due to the game not telling me useful information. There's no way to check your controller buttons in the pause menu either, which again, plenty of other games have been able to do so. Okay, so the following that I mentioned are A, nitpicks, B, things that don't apply to everyone or don't really have a problem with, or C, I'm not really all that certain of. So just keep that in mind when I'm mentioning the next few things. This might just be a PS3 thing, or I might just be bad at the game, but I feel as if my double jumps would not be processed from time to time, which would result in me getting hurt or even dying. The strange thing is this also happened more in certain areas than others. It might just be an awkward timing on my end, or it might just be because of how different jumping works compared to other games with double jumps. Now, after you beat the game, there isn't much else you can do that feels unique or doesn't lead to a goal that's not collecting more power cells. There's a secret ending after you're getting all the power cells in the game, and you can collect precursor orbs, which also sometimes lead to power cells, but that's it. There's not any really special collectible that you can get, and doing all this doesn't get you anything extra like an art gallery, commentary about the developers, or anything like that. The PS3 version does have trophies, so there's that, I guess. Now, earlier I rewarded the variety of eco you could use on your journey, but there is an issue I have with it. Blue eco does practically everything for you.
Blue eco allows you to run fast, break boxes, and even activate some precursor artifacts when you get near them.
And attracts precursor orbs, while red eco only makes you stronger, which is practically pointless since most enemies die in one hit anyways. Yellow eco, which allows you to fire projectiles, does some jobs of blue eco, but could also break armor, and you could do all this from a distance. These two made red eco not even worth using, since the other types did the red eco's job better and more. Also, no subtitles was so difficult to try and do when I was doing the Let's Play. Now of course this doesn't apply to everyone, but everything is audio only. There is nothing visible telling you anything. And since I was playing the game for the first time, I wouldn't know when the notices would actually pop up about a possible hint to an objective. This also doesn't really help that much if you're in a loud room, which again doesn't apply to everyone, but at the same time, I feel like I would have had an easier time if there was any form of visual notice on screen. In my eyes, this game gets a 7.5 out of 10. It's a very fun game that I would recommend trying out. The story isn't anything too grand, but the lore that rides alongside it is good enough to be interesting and be questioned for possible expansion. The gameplay is very unique compared to other platformers, but there were a few issues that I had problems with. Although some of them others might not find so bad. All I can say before you play the game is look up the controls. By the way, I've heard that the PS4 version has some issues that make the game feel worse, so if you're looking for a good feeling but modern enough version, play the PS3 version. If you've got nothing else, play the PS4 version because you're probably not going to get a PS2 just to play one game. Thank you so much for watching my first review if you have made it this far. I will be reviewing Jak 2 and Jak 3 later on in the future. That's more than likely going to happen in 2018. If we're lucky, Jak 2 maybe in December. Probably not, but let me know what you guys thought about all this in the comments below. And if you enjoyed, don't forget to like and subscribe for more video game content. But until the next video, take care.